Hello, beautiful human, and welcome back to Inner Space. I'm Danielle YS, the founder of Inner Eye Wellness, an astrobiologist turned grief doula. Inner Space is a place to nurture your life's journey so that you can dive inside with curiosity to live with deeper trust, peace, and purpose. Whether it's life or death, work or play, solitude or connection, inner space is where true life begins. So let's dive in. We are now solidly into the autumn season here in the Northern Hemisphere. Leaves have almost all fallen. The days are shorter, especially where I am, as we just went through daylight savings. Yes, we are still doing that. There's a noticeable and lasting chill in the air. Snow has fallen in some parts of the world, and my partner and I are beginning to watch the avalanche forecasts. This is the time of year when time feels like it starts accelerating. How did the holidays come so soon? 2024 is just around the corner. The whole year is almost done. Many of my clients and yoga students have said to me in the past week alone, and I'm right there with them. And for much of the world's population, November is a time of gathering, as families, friends, and loved ones come together to celebrate their own rituals and traditions, and to reflect on the year. It's a time of warmth, connection, reconnection, cheer, and a whole lot of drama. Whether you love this time of year, whether you're someone who likes to pretend that the holidays and what they represent don't exist, or whether you are an advocate for honoring the roots of this land and its native inhabitants, this theme will support you in moving through this month with more peace and power. That's why at Inner Eye Wellness, I've chosen the November theme, Holding Healthy Boundaries, to help us all move through the holidays, including our triggers, traumas, activators, limiting life patterns, and more, with more ease and grace. And if we can do this, we can face all of life with more peace, light, and joy. So last month, October, we explored the theme Learning to Live Well and Die Well through Surrender. We learned about one juicy yoga practice to help us learn to surrender, Shavasana. We also learned why honoring life's natural endings is so important and empowering through 3 stories of my own journey, and how surrender can become freedom and transformation when we allow the obstacle to be our way. Whether that obstacle is not finding a parking spot, or whether it's a community tragedy. This month, November, our theme is holding healthy boundaries. Now, I know that the word boundaries is a big buzzword these days. And while all those resources out there about the kinds of boundaries that they are, how to set them, how to identify, how to hold them are awesome, because they're all setting us on a path to knowing ourselves deeper and honoring ourselves deeper. I like to look at boundaries from the other way around. How we feel when we make a decision, and using that to inform us of where our boundaries lie. So as we work through November, we will talk about how to identify, set, and communicate healthy boundaries to those around us so that we can have a more peaceful holiday season that's truly joyous and that can minimize the stresses that we see from it. But we won't do it in the traditional way. I won't tell you what your boundaries are. I'm just here to guide you to understanding how to find them. So whether you are someone that loves the holidays, or whether you're someone who likes to pretend they don't exist, or whether you're an advocate for honoring our true history, this episode is for you. Today, we'll explore what boundaries are, why it's important to know about them and to have them, and how to identify if you're crossing your own boundaries or if someone else has, and why it matters if those boundaries are being crossed. So first, let's talk about what boundaries are. If you go onto your search engine or your main social media feed and type in "what are boundaries" or "boundaries," as its own keyword, you're going to get barraged with tons of information about what they are, how to set them, different categories of boundaries. But really, it's a lot more intuitive than that. I love the quote by Prentice Hemphill, who's a therapist, somatics teacher, writer, and the founder of the Embodiment Institute, that says, "Boundaries are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously." Now, the reason that I love this quote is because it's up to us to set those boundaries. It's up to us to look inwards and identify both what the boundary is to be able to love someone else, as well as what the boundary is to love ourselves. And then find the boundary that makes sense for both. But usually it's not that black and white. How do we figure out which of those is the right boundary for us? It all comes down to body-based truth. We can define boundaries and identify boundaries by how we feel after we've made a decision or taken some action. We can identify our boundaries based on our energy levels. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about physical energy levels, like, I'm so tired I just ran 10 miles, therefore I must have crossed a boundary. Likewise, I'm not talking about I feel so energized because I slept a lot or I had a lot of coffee. Those aren't what I'm talking about. The energy that I am talking about is our life force energy. And I'll go more into detail with this in the next episode, episode 9. But for now, think of it as a feeling of fulfillment or depletion. So now we've explored what boundaries are in a less traditional sense. Boundaries can be defined by how we feel when we take an action or make a choice. And they are the distance at which I can love you and me simultaneously. It's not necessarily black and white. Now let's explore why it's important to know about and have healthy boundaries. Prentice Hemphill also says boundaries give us the space to do the work of loving ourselves. They might be, actually, the first and fundamental expression of self-love. They also give us the space to love and witness others as they are, even those that have hurt us. So this quote gives us a deeper understanding of why boundaries aren't black and white, and why it's an ongoing process of identifying how our energy is moving through our bodies and through our lives in order to identify what those boundaries are. Later in this episode, we'll see that one boundary in a single situation might be completely the wrong boundary in the same situation with different context. So why is it important to have healthy boundaries and to know about them? Boundaries give us the space to do the work of loving ourselves. Oftentimes, we can't do the work of loving ourselves if we're having boundaries crossed every day. Someone I know has a parent that struggles with addiction. Anita loves their parent deeply. Anita wants to have a relationship with their parent. And so every time that parent says that they're going to be there for them, wants to take them out, wants to spend time together, Anita jumps at the opportunity, or jumped, before they figured out what their boundaries were and set them. Now, every time Anita's parent says that they want to spend time with Anita, they end up disappointing Anita. And for a long time, Anita would not set that boundary, saying, I can't love myself when I'm loving you this much. Because Anita wanted to love that much. Anita wanted to believe that their parent could also love them that much. And if they didn't love their parent that much, they wouldn't get that love from their parent. Eventually, as Anita practiced mindfulness, they started to understand more and more how much this boundary or lack of boundary was not letting them love their self. So over time, they started setting up and communicating better boundaries with their parent. Now, this hasn't necessarily brought them closer together, It may never do that, but it is allowing Anita to feel more deeply loving towards themselves. And beautifully, it comes into the second part of Prentice Hemphel's quote. Boundaries also give us the space to love and witness others as they are, even those that have hurt us. When Anita set that boundary to stop seeing their parent after so many times of being hurt, they also gave themselves that extra space to be able to just witness their parent and accept who and what they are at this moment and be okay with that without having to give up that space to love themselves. Have you ever found yourself in a similar situation, always saying yes to a friend, a family member, a loved one, but every time you said yes, you ended up being hurt or disappointed? What if you could find the space and set the space for you to be able to love yourself and honor yourself as well as loving them at the same time? What if you could love yourself as much as you have been giving love to that person? And in the process, not abandoning that person, but being able to love them in a deeper way, exactly as they are and who they are right now. If this sounds like something that you'd like to do, and sounds like something that you don't know how to do yet, consider exploring a guide to help you set those boundaries and identify them. If you want help learning how to do this, I'd love to hear more about what you're going through. Visit inner-eye.org/get started. That's INNER-I.org/get started to learn more about how you can identify these boundaries, communicate them, and hold them for a deeper and more loving connection to both yourself and that person. So now we've discussed what boundaries are and why it's so important to know about and have healthy boundaries. Let's dive into how to identify if you're crossing your own boundaries, if someone else is crossing your boundaries, and why that matters. So as I said earlier, when it comes to identifying and setting healthy boundaries, I like to move backwards. Often what you find when you search for boundaries on the internet is a logical approach. But boundaries don't always show up that way. For example, you'll see a lot of things that break boundaries down into categories: personal, work, time, physical. And from there, you identify what in those categories are places where you'd like to have better boundaries, or places where you feel like you should have better boundaries. And from there, you use your mind to write down what your boundaries are and to communicate and hold them steady. I like to start in the reverse way. I like to say, what's a situation that felt like it didn't go so well? How did I feel energy-wise? And what is that energy telling me about a potential boundary that has been crossed? What the heck that boundary is? And how to approach that next time it comes up. Again, boundaries are not always logical. Boundaries are always embodied, meaning we feel them in our bodies. We feel when a boundary has been crossed. We feel when we've upheld a boundary, even if it might feel uncomfortable to do so. What this comes down to is looking at our energy. And again, this isn't physical energy. This isn't saying, I feel depleted because I just ran a marathon, and so a boundary must have been crossed. Likewise, it's also not saying, I upheld my boundary because I slept 12 hours or I drank 5 cups of coffee and I feel so energized. We're talking about life force energy. And again, I'll go deeper into what this is in episode 9, so stay tuned. When we're talking about boundaries, we're talking about life force energy, and this is not always logical the way we may expect it to play out. We can gain life force energy and feel fulfilled and energized while depleting physical energy, and a boundary hasn't necessarily been crossed. The marathon example. And vice versa, we can deplete life force energy when we are not doing anything physically taxing. The slept 12 hours or drank 5 cups of coffee example. For someone who loves helping people and feels a lot of purpose and meaning in helping people, they might get life force energy from spending all day helping friends pack boxes and move to a different home and take a toll on their physical body. Because at the end of the day, that person is totally at ease, feels fulfilled, purposeful, happy, and connected because they were helping out. And so their life force energy was filled. On the other hand, someone who lives on mental stimulation, academic discussions, debates, might feel that laying on the couch watching a movie may leave them feeling more tired, more depleted, even depressed than when they sat down to begin with, because their energy is not going towards the thing that really fulfills them. Likewise, the same situation in different contexts can easily have different boundaries. And what that means is their outcome energetically feels different. Consider this situation. You're having a conversation with a coworker or a client that has a set time boundary around it, and that person goes over your time limit. You don't necessarily have something going on afterwards that you need to get to, but every moment that ticks by, how do you think you're feeling in this situation? Are you gaining energy? Are you feeling depleted, restless, resentful as the moments tick by? Now consider the same situation in a different context. You're having a conversation with a friend. Maybe you're out to lunch. Maybe you're on the phone. You've set a time amount, say an hour. And again, you don't necessarily have something to go to. And the same thing happens. Your friend keeps talking, keeps asking you questions, going beyond the time limit that you set for yourself. Consider how your energy feels. Are you energized? Are you depleted? Every minute that goes by, how does it feel? Perhaps in this situation, you're not even clocking that the minutes are going by. So hopefully, this helps to illustrate that boundaries are not black and white. Boundaries don't necessarily follow a logical progression, and if we try to identify and set them based on a category, a time, a place, a person, a situation, and follow those based on what we've decided in our minds, that might not necessarily be the right boundary for a particular situation that arises. What might be more helpful for you, and what has certainly been more helpful for me and many, if not all of the clients that I've served, is to tune in with that energy within and identify whether this situation or this choice is going to be filling me up or emptying me out. And that is something that we can feel inside of us even if we think about the situation. We don't have to go through with it. It's something that we feel in our guts. So as you're making your plans and navigating the next few months, pay attention to your energy and whether it feels depleted or renewed, or maybe it feels neutral. And that's information for you too, that there's nothing that's activating you within the situation right now. So today we've explored boundaries from a couple different angles. What boundaries are, why it matters to know about and have healthy boundaries, and how to identify if your boundaries are being crossed or might be crossed. And I hope this has given you a little bit of a different perspective on boundaries that might be more intuitive. And I want to reiterate that whatever boundaries you feel like you might be facing, you feel like you may or may not have, this is not an easy thing to figure out, but it can become easy and more intuitive. There is a way, and it requires practice and patience and experimentation. One of the most beautiful things that we can do with this information is to experiment. If you don't know how an action is going to feel, try it out. Then pay attention to your energy. because you will learn valuable information about setting your own boundaries that way. And if this feels overwhelming, you'd like to explore this but don't really know exactly where to start or think that you will be able to commit to it, having a guide to show us the way is part of the process of learning about ourselves. So if you're ready to dive in and you want support, I'd love to hear more about what you're going through. Visit innereye.org/get started to learn more and to chat. Again, that's inner-i.org/get started. And for those of you who are geeks like me and love homework, here it is. Start to notice your own energy levels when you make choices or choices are made for you. Is your energy depleted? Is it refilled? Consider that when it's depleted, it's likely that a boundary has been crossed. Use that as information to see if you can identify what that boundary was. Thank you so much for exploring inner space with me, Danielle YS, today. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and a rating on Spotify to help others find their own path to healing and healthy boundaries. Know when new episodes hit your headphones by subscribing to Inner Space. And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, share it with them. To learn more about my work as a grief doula, connect with me on Instagram at inner.i.griefdoula or head to our website, innereye.org. That's INNER-I.org. I'm Danielle YS, and until next time, keep looking in.